If you're holding a US dollar, then you are being robbed. Doesn't matter what country you live in, as long as you're holding US dollar, you are actually being robbed by the Federal Reserve through this um, operation they call quantitative easing. A more accurate description for this would be actually currency counterfeiting. And the Federal Reserve actually should be called the counterfeiting department of the United States. And so Jerome Powell should be the chairman of the counterfeiting department of the United States. And people think this is called capitalism, but it's not. Capitalism doesn't allow for currency counterfeiting or currency manipulation. Um, this is theft. And this system that they create acts like a siphon pump that extract wealth from the general public. And the general public around the world, by the way, not just the US. Anyone who's holding US dollar is being robbed. It's really simple economics. If you print more currency, then its value goes down. And so as a result of that, you have to work more. And because everyone is getting squeezed, even the company that you work for, they're also getting squeezed. And so they have really no choice but to either raise their prices, which that's the last thing that they want to do. The other thing is try to cut their cost. That means either layoffs or instead of hiring more people, they make their current employees work even more. This pump, the siphon pump, it basically has two components. It has the core and it has the protective shell around it. And what I mean by core is basically the mechanism of how this works. And so first they have to create the currency out of thin air, complete thin air, there's nothing really backing the US dollar. President FDR in the 1930s took us off the gold standard. And ever since then, things started to get more expensive. And, it's because the currency is being devalued. And so the second component is basically artificially lowering interest rate. Interest rates nowadays, believe it or not, should be a lot higher than what they are, but they artificially push it down, and that would create incentives for corporations to take out these loans. The third component of this core mechanism is basically buying back their own stocks and practicing some other shady loopholes in Wall Street. And so you have currency created out of thin air and then artificially pushing the interest rate down. And then you have the shady practices of Wall Street. So these are the major component of this core siphon pump. This is how the wealth is being extracted from the general public. How does it endure? Like, why does the rest of the world have to put up with this? Well, that's when the protective shell of the siphon pump take place. The shell has basically seven components. The first one is to always create demand for the US dollar. And the way to create this demand is actually by brute force. That's why we have 1,500 military forces around the world. And it's by soft power, by, creating spreading the American culture, putting the American flag in movies and things like that. The brute force, how does that work? Well, you force the oil producing nations to sell their oil for US dollar, and if they try to sell it for something different, then you will show them the democracy. Like for example, what happened to Saddam Hussein when he tried to sell his oil for euros. Suddenly, George Bush wanted to spread democracy in Iraq. Same thing happened in Libya. Gaddafi tried to create this gold-backed currency and sell his oil for gold. And then Obama who happened to be Democrat and won the Nobel Peace Prize, also wanted to spread democracy in Libya. And so the U.S. Airplanes immediately bombed Libya, and soon after that, Gaddafi was captured and killed. I'm not trying to defend Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi or even Maduro. Same thing happened to Maduro. He was talking to China about their attempt to create a rival currency to kind of escape this robbery that is happening. Obviously, China and Russia are major powers, and they're kind of tired of this currency counterfeiting because when the rest of the world work hard to produce real products like cars and things like that, they ship it to the United States. What do they get in return? They get dollar bills that are basically conned into existence out of thin air. And so it's a lousy deal, and China and Russia wants to get out of it. But in retaliation, United States creates this war between Ukraine and Russia. Suddenly Ukraine wants to join the West, and they want to install these missiles. And of course, Russia is not going to allow for that. Um, but the U.S. is supporting Ukraine in an attempt to drain Russia, and also the U.S. is priming Taiwan to in case China goes too far with their project, this currency project. The U.S. is sending messages that we're actually getting Taiwan ready, and so China is watching what's happening in Ukraine very closely. And so their attempt to talk to Maduro about, it's like they're trying to retaliate. But of course, it didn't happen. And so what's not working for these countries is that they're being run by thugs and, corrupt leaders like Putin and President Xi. And, they're actually not good people. And that's it's been working in favor for the U.S. Things are aligned, and they make more sense when you take into consideration that it's all about this money printing operation. The second component when it comes to this protective shell of to protect this operation has to do with masking the effect of inflation. The government has been able to hide the effect of inflation, especially in the U.S., by mobilizing women and having them work, uh, you know, beside the man. I'm not saying that the women were not oppressed, or were not treated like second class citizens, and things like that. I'm just saying the true motivation behind this feminine movement. But then, soon after that, that became not enough. And so, of course, creating these trade agreements with the rest of the world, like NAFTA and so forth. That's why your avocado comes from Mexico, your bread comes from Canada. It's all to drive prices down. That's why companies are allowed to outsource to India, Singapore, and all these countries. It's to drive cost down. If the cost of living is going up because of inflation, and prices are going down because of efficiency and trade agreements, you really don't see what's happening. And they get to print more money, and get away with it basically for longer. But what gives it away is when you look at the asset, when you look at asset prices like houses and precious metals and things like that. You can't really outsource housing. They try to lower the cost of building a house, and by allowing illegal immigrants to work mostly in construction and landscaping and things like that, and that helps driving the cost of building houses down, alongside using cheaper materials. Like, nowadays houses are built with cheap plastic, cardboard, and everything's glued together and stapled. And it's not like the houses back in the day when pipes were made out of copper, and even the thickness of sheetrock is different, and materials were more durable, higher quality materials. But despite using cheaper materials and having mostly illegal immigrants build houses, house prices are still going up because you can only mask the effect of inflation so much. You can't really hide it completely. Technology is a great way of making people more productive. That explains why there's this huge push toward AI, because I think the government is betting that AI is going to make companies more efficient, and it's going to keep pushing prices down so they can get to continue printing money and continue creating inflation. And that's why the federal government is pushing for removing any state regulations when it comes to AI companies. Like, these databases are driving up the cost of electricity, and they're polluting water and things like that. But we're still not able to regulate them because the federal government wants these companies to succeed. They want AI to take over. It will make the cost of providing services, the cost of producing whatever products we're making, the cost of all this will go down. That's their bet. And so what's going to happen to the people who are going to lose their jobs? They're basically going to go back to the jobs that have been taken usually by illegal immigrants, and that's why we're all of the sudden wants to take the illegal immigrants out of the country, because the U.S. citizens now are going to work in construction and landscaping, and things that the illegal immigrants used to do. So the fourth component would be bribing the public uh, through programs like welfare and different type of financial aid, because they know that the creation of inflation is eventually going to price a lot of people out of the economy. People are not going to be able to afford to live, and so if you have enough of these people, they could actually tip over the balance and the stability of the system. So what do you do about them? You just print extra money and give it to them so they can stay quiet. And of course, I'm not saying people who are on welfare, are don't really need help. Of course they do, uh, but a lot of people are also taking advantage of this. They take advantage of these programs. But I think providing these programs is not the right thing to do to begin with. But they have to do it because it helps give them more time, and allows them to continue with this currency counterfeiting. And so the fifth component is creating uh, these inflation, what I call them as overflow drains. Like, because if they create too much inflation, that could also tip the system. Makes it very highly unstable. So they needed a way to create a like an overflow drain. It's kind of like when when you look at your sink, you have if you look closely, there's a hole close to the top of the sink, and that hole connects to the drain. And the reason for that is if in case you forget if you plug the sink and you forget the water running, you don't want the water to overflow over the counter and make a mess. And so they created this overflow drain, so the water reaches that hole and starts going to the drain. And in my opinion, this overflow is happened to be Bitcoin. Bitcoin, if you think about it, a lot of people suddenly have a lot of money, especially after 2020, and so they didn't want these people to go spend it and buy like real asset. I mean, that's going to drive prices up even more, and so they created this way of sucking this extra inflation, instead of inflating, let's say, house prices, people put it in Bitcoin. They convinced that people that, Bitcoin is somehow has value, and people were willing to put any extra money that they didn't need, or, they put it in Bitcoin. But of course, some people, fell into this trap, and they actually put all of their money into bitcoins, and a lot of people lost a lot of money, but that's okay because it kind of sucked the extra inflation out of the system. Every time we get to the point where the system is about to collapse, suddenly we have a crisis that justify a massive amount of money printing, which brings me to the sixth component, which is, you know, manufacturing crisis to justify massive money printing. Like, what happened after the dot-com bubble burst in the 2000. We all know what happened in 2001 when a plane hit a tall building. And of course, we all know what happened in 2020. A certain cold spread right after 2019 had very, very serious liquidity shortage issues, and I was actually following that. I was wondering what exactly is going to, how are they going to get out of this in 2019. Um, a lot of people didn't even realize how serious the cash shortage was in banks. And so what was the solution? The solution was to print massive amount of money in 2020. And the last component, I think, that is going to keep this system keeps it going is basically continuing the division and the hatred between people, just basically to keep us all distracted. I think they're very happy when they hear us debate whether or not we should raise taxes or lower taxes, or whether or not we should adapt socialism or communism or capitalism. So they're always happy when as long as we're not talking about the real issue, which is money printing, which is currency counterfeiting, because it doesn't matter what solution you try to come up with. You could debate socialism until the end of times, and you can raise taxes as much as you want. The fact is, it's not going to change anything, because the real issue is this money printing problem. I'm kind of surprised that no one is really talking about this, because the system that the siphon system that I'm talking about allows them to take loans. So their income is basically in the form of loans, and you don't pay taxes on loans. And so, they put their assets, which is, stocks in the stock market, they use that as their collateral. And that would allow them to take a lot of loans, equal to the value of their stocks. And so, inflation causes the stock market to go up. And that means their assets value is going up, which allows them to take more loans. Now, as long as the interest rate is lower than the inflation rate, then they have a net positive, and they have this extra money that they can spend, and they don't pay any taxes on that. They live an extremely lavish lifestyle that no emperor throughout the human history ever dreamed of, and they don't even have to create any value or service or product. These companies all they have to do is basically just have a story, and they have to have, you know they have to be publicly traded, and once they have stocks, and they can take loans, and they can buy their own shares, and there are so many loopholes and shady practices in Wall Street, and the bottom line is that they're getting these loans, which basically get printed out of thin air, and that's why we can't have deflation. We can't have asset prices going down, because it means that they have to stop. They have to keep interest rate down while inflation up. So as long as this is happening, um, then they're living their wildest dream. And the moment that interest rates go up to a higher rate than the inflation rate, then this whole thing collapses. That's why we can't have asset prices go down. That's why stock market can never go down. The government or the Federal Reserve will never allow the stock market to go down. That's why inflation is going to continue to go up, and they don't really care if it destroys the fabric of society, and if it destroys the country, and if it creates a World War III. To them it doesn't really matter, because they have their bunkers underground, and they're prepared, and some of them are, like Elon Musk is prepared to he wants to go to Mars, and they're talking about Earth. They're talking about this planet as like a like a disposable item that they can just loot as much as they can, and it's fine if it gets destroyed in the process. They just go to other planets, and they populate and loot other civilizations. Look, I really think that the US is a really exceptional country, and I really think that it's right now is probably one of the best places to live, for a simple reason, which is the fact that I'm speaking my mind without being afraid. That is something that is really, really valuable. I mean, other countries don't really have this level of freedom, and to me, that is really the most important thing. That's not. I'm not. I don't live here because I make a lot of money, or because I live a luxurious lifestyle. I live here because of the level of freedom that I feel, even though it seems like it's reaching the end. And I feel like this whole system is probably uh, in its final stages, because this is not sustainable. You can't keep making money out of thin air and create this massive inflation forever. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you. And I think the days are numbered. They probably know this. That's why I think there is more push toward division. They want people divided. They want to incentivize violence. And, you know, the reason it's the oldest trick in the book. You kind of mobilize people for protest, and then you insert your own people in the protest, and these people create violence, and that would give you the excuse to launch your military and control the cities by force. You know, because I think people are tired. The people are sick and tired of this system. This constant rise of the cost of living, this constant increase of the workload, the constant increase of stress and anxiety, and this constant run, this feel that you're always on a treadmill. You always doesn't matter how hard you work, you always your cost of living keeps going up, and you're just trying to catch up. This also is not sustainable. When a collapse happens, there's always going to be some chaos. I mean, this is unavoidable, even if it's a transitional chaos, but I think it's going to happen. But I think there are some ways you can do to kind of protect yourself. And I'm not going to try to sell you a course or anything like that. I'm just, I'm just trying to talk, just have a discussion and see what other people think. But anyways, in the next episode, I'll tell you what I think we should be doing to kind of prepare for what's coming. This is the Truth Seeker channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.